Okay, hello and welcome. And this is a very exciting day for me. I bring to you the first hangout for I'm a Storyteller. My name is Ritu, and let's begin by saying why I love stories. I've been a television journalist, television producer, and my love for stories started there. Documenting people, documenting heroes, documenting celebrities, and meeting people from all walks of life telling their stories visually. I think stories are magical. They can inspire, they can motivate you, they can teach you, they help you to imagine. There's nothing best than a magical experience when you listen to a good story. I'm a Storyteller is a series of curated stories of people who use stories in their real life, either as a storyteller or as someone who is meeting people uh, to influence them. It could be CEOs, could be students going abroad, making multicultural meetings, going into multicultural events. Anyone who uses the art of a story to influence someone is a good fit of mine. And I'm happy to meet and introduce four lovely storytellers from across the country. Our first hangout is on I'm a Storyteller. I'm a mother, I'm a storyteller. So these are four awesome moms who are storytellers in their own right, running story-based ventures, telling stories to a whole lot of children and adults across the country. So let's welcome and let's hear it from Deepta. Deepta, could you tell us something about yourself?
Hi, lovely to be here as part of this hangout. It's very exciting. A little bit about what I do. I run a venture. It's called Ever After. I've been a trainer and became a storyteller post that, roundabout in 2009. So since then, I've been using stories in education, in teaching both children and adults. It could be concepts in school, it could be life skills. So it's a huge landscape. So Ever After was started as a venture last year, and we've been specializing in including stories in the curriculum. I run after school programs, workshops, storytelling performances, corporate training workshops, and also planning to get into the product space, all to do with stories and storytelling. So there is a narrative at the heart of everything we do.
Right. Thanks, Deepta. What about you, Devri? Would you like to talk about yourself?
So, hi everyone, happy to be here.
Devri?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We
Yes.
can.
So happy to be here. I'm Desi. I live in Bombay and I have a 4-year-old son. I started my storytelling venture, Little Readers Nook, in 2012. It began as a library and then we moved on to storytelling sessions for children. And now we're doing both storytelling across 10 different locations in Bombay, as well as we send home a set of books, worksheets, craft ideas, everything centered around books to parents for parent-child reading at home. So these are two different offerings that we have at Digital Readers Nook. And the idea behind love for books in children at a young age. And we basically believe that there's a lot that children can learn from stories in a fun way. That's what we try to do at Little
Right. Uh, okay. Okay, then we have Palak. Palak, would you talk about yourself?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Hi, I'm Falak. I'm based in Bangalore, and I run this company called My Little Chatterbox. Our basic aim is to create a lifelong association between book stories and reading for kids between 0 to 10 years. We have phonics program, we have book clubs, we have reading kits as well. We'll be completing 2 years in August, 13 August to be precise. And we've recently launched a reading lounge for kids in Bangalore, in South Bangalore. So excited to be here.
Okay, great. Tanu, shoot away.
Hi. Hi.
That's
How can I start? The stories started from my childhood, I believe, and that's where the love started. Then, of course, the boys, they came along and it just grew to mad proportions. Now the storytelling has extended beyond home, and I keep holding, sessions with the children more. It's more to do with the love of reading than anything else. Value education, everything else. It just falls into place if the primary love for books and reading is in place. And we do storytelling sessions for a different group of children, like these street children, and we have a home that we go to, home for children, and so we take the stories to different places. And so far, it's been lovely.
Mhm. Okay, great. Let's begin by this one very famous saying, and I think, Devki, you use it as a tagline in your organization. Children are made readers on the laps of their parents. What did you become a storyteller when you became a parent, or unlike what Deepta did, that was a storyteller first and then she became a mom? Was your story somewhere the other way around?
Yes, I started, telling stories to my son. Actually, it started a little before that. When we used to stay in New York, we used to visit the public library very often, once a week, and there was this lovely story time happening there for children, a free story time for toddlers. And I was not a mom then, and I used to watch that, and I was just fascinated. So when I had my child, I tried doing that with my son, and the way he responded was so beautiful. So it moved on to his friends, and then that's how Little Readers Nook started. So yes, it started as a mom.
A lot what's happening in today's India is that families are going nuclear. So the traditional seat of the in-house storytelling led by grandparents in the previous time is being replaced by parents today. So parents are becoming storytellers for their children, working very hard to put in a sort of a ritual to make reading a habit, or maybe making storytelling a daily ritual at home. So that's where we're coming from, and that's where I believe that mothers take the lion's share of bringing up their children. It's an important skill to have, or important tool to have as a parent, to be able to tell stories to their children. Tanu, would you like to talk about that? Where did your storytelling journey begin as a parent? Because you've got grown-up preteen boys, so you have, when it comes to telling stories to your children, I think it's important.
I can't hear you properly. Hello. You'll have to repeat that. Did you?
Okay, I'm saying
Yeah.
that as a parent with 15 boys, could you tell us something about your storytelling journey? How you started
Oh,
telling
yeah.
stories to your
It's
children, and
see, it's changed. It's changed over the years. More so because obviously, I mean, they're growing, and we started with the nighttime storytelling, and we grew after that. It's changed from the tiny picture books to middle readers, and we still read together. So it's been a lot of fun, but you have to constantly evolve. The whole idea of storytelling evolves as we go along. It's the books have changed, the ideas have changed, the discussions that we have has completely changed. You know, but it's a wonderful journey. I mean, I don't think that teenagers or preteens are not necessarily interested in storytelling. Oh, they are. You just need to tell them what they want to hear. Are you
right.
there? Yeah.
Yeah. Deepta, when do you think when you think is the ideal age to begin storytelling? Is there an ideal age at all, as long as
Oh,
children are concerned?
absolutely not. No, I don't think so. I think you can start as early as, I don't know, a few days maybe.
Yes.
If you start talking to your child in the form of stories, and you say, "Oh, you know what happened today?" and "Mama did this for you," and "Mama did that for you." So I think that's really where it starts. So no, and there's really no beginning. There's no end. And I think for people who haven't started yet, regardless of how old their child is or children are, I think just get down there and do it. Better late than never, really.
Right. Okay. Let's. If we were to ask, why, what is that one top reason why you would recommend storytelling or reading as a parenting tool for parents? What would that be? Palak, would you like to take that?
Yeah, there are many things that storytelling and reading brings along. But for me, I've been reading since I was a little baby, and it took me to some other world. So I want kids to experience that, basically. Besides literacy and besides the intelligence level and the communication development, whatever. But the main thing, the main reason why I recommend reading and storytelling is because it gives kids a space that where they can go and um, they can be on their own. It's their own zone. They imagine, they start loving books, they start exploring books in a different manner altogether.
Why? What is that one top? Right. I can hear someone say something in the background. Okay,
Yeah, so
doesn't matter.
the one
Yes.
reason is basically because I want kids to experience that, to fall in love with books and to kind of experience that magic that I have grown up with. So that's my biggest reason why I started
Storytelling
this.
or reading as a parenting tool for parents? What would that be? Palak, I think somebody has
Yeah.
this chat open on another window
There are
somewhere.
many things that storytelling and reading brings along. But for me, I've been reading since I was a little baby, and it took me to some other
Somebody's
worlds.
watching this live on another window. So you'll have to
Besides
close that other window, otherwise you keep
and
hearing an
besides
echo.
the intelligence level and the communication development, whatever, the main and
Okay, one of you is
storytelling
playing this up on another video, so I think that's why there's an
kids
echo. So let's not do that.
can go
Okay, we can
and
spoil our own audio. Okay, doesn't
Ah,
matter. But
they can be on their own.
that's
It's
okay.
their own zone. They imagine, they start loving books, they start exploring books in a different manner. Okay.
Right.
I
Okay,
can
doesn't matter.
in the
Um,
background.
okay, is storytelling a
Yeah.
mom
So
and child experience?
the one reason
Do you think it's a
I
great
want kids
point to connect,
to fall in
like
love
our
with books
time, we time?
to kind of experience that magic that I have grown up with. So that's my biggest reason why I started.
Storytelling as a parenting parents? What would that be? Hala?
There are many things that storytelling and reading. I've been
Okay.
reading since I was a little baby, and it took me to
Yes,
another
somebody has
world.
opened this on a YouTube or has opened us from another account to listen to this live within our own conversation. So I think there's a bit of a audio echo. So whoever's opened it anywhere else will have to close it down. We're spoiling our own broadcast.
okay, it's a lot quieter now, so I think we can make sense of everything now.
Okay, so yes, okay. Can storytelling become a parent and child moment or a mother and child moment? How can it be bettered? What are the things that it does to a child when he or she sits with a parent to listen to a story or read a book together? Devi, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's absolutely magical, what happens when the child sits next to you and you're reading out a story, come to some funny part, and you laugh together. It's just that physical closeness as well, because I have a very active 4-year-old, and he never sits in one place otherwise. But when he brings out a book and we sit together, that's the only time he'll snuggle up to me, and we're so physically close. It's such a beautiful feeling. And of course, when we share something together, when we're laughing over something together, it's an absolutely bonding experience, and really nothing can beat that for me.
Right. Geeta, a lot of people tell me that I'm not a reader, for adults. They say that I'm not much of a reader. I don't like stories too much, but I want my child to go through that experience. But they obviously fail to have those basic things that requires them to draw a child to a book or to a story. What can parents like that do? They obviously aren't storytellers like us, but they want to become one. They want to become good storytellers for their children. There are things that they can do to draw a child to their book.
Well, I think first of all, if a parent is not a reader, then I think it's important that they start warming up to the idea of becoming a reader. It could be anything. It needn't be a book. It could be a magazine. It could be a newspaper article. Just be seen reading every now and then, I think. And if you really do want to become a storyteller, then I think there are enough training programs, or there's enough material available on the internet for you to just go and look up and just start creating a conversation around reading, create conversation around books. Just pick up any book, and just start looking at it. Maybe become a reader with your child. I think the important thing is to take that effort. It's very easy to say I'm not a reader, but I think it's about going forward from there, right? And I firmly believe that children take up reading by looking at their parents. So it's that's very, very important. If a parent is seen reading, a child naturally takes to it. My 3-year-old, flips through National Geographic. It's if even if it's just looking at pictures, that's exciting enough. I think just strew books all around, and just put your child in the middle, experience it as an activity, and then soon you'll find that you're also drawn to it. You may not have had the habit, you may not have inculcated it in your younger days, but there's always an opportunity to start. And what better time than to start it with your own child? I think you grow together as readers, I think.
Right. But what about, there are those instances of children being too jumpy, to be not interested in books and stories. How do you draw a child to a book? Let's say, can we give them like the top 3 things which are tried and tested tricks to get a child drawn to a book or a story?
Is that for me?
Yes, you can take that.
Okay. Top 3, wow, tips and tricks. So I'd imagine something like creating an experience around a book. Maybe, let's say, watch a movie if the book has been made into a movie, or show pictures first, and then create some excitement around it, and then slowly start reading. Also, I think if there is how can I say it? Maybe a birthday party is a good idea to introduce a child to the whole world of books. Have a theme party around a character in a book. I mean, we do that very easily with characters like Chhota Bheem and Mickey Mouse and things like that. But why not characters from books? I've always if I'm not big on birthday parties, but if I were to ever host one for my child, then I'd do it around characters from books. Even if they don't know about it, it's okay. It's a great way to introduce it to them. You have a themed birthday party, and get all these kids dressed up in all of these characters, and then they start questioning. They ask you, so who is this character and which book is he or she from? So that becomes a talking point, I think. And also start maybe creating your own little stories around everyday things, so that naturally sort of lends into the reading habit in a sense. So I think these are 2 things that anyone can try, because I think everyone is a storyteller. We are just wired to do it. We don't recognize it as an intrinsic, as an inherent skill, but it's there in everyone. So I think sort of get in touch with that side of you. Start creating these stories around little things that a child may do, and and then you find a book that has something that talks about something similar, and slowly lean into the whole reading habit.
Right. Palak, would you like to add anything to that?
Absolutely. Deepta said it perfectly, but one thing that I feel is with hyperactive kids, I have one at home, so I follow her lead completely. So if she is in no mood to read a book at that point in time, I'll not tell it too much. I know she'll come back. So for parents, it's extremely important to find a moment where both the parent and child are completely comfortable. They are totally, they don't have anything else on their mind, and then go ahead and read that book and enjoy it as you read it. Don't make it a chore, don't make it a task. Enjoy reading with your child. Even if for younger kids, even if it is 1 or 2 pages, you can't expect them to sit through the entire book. So even if it is that 1 or 2 page, that read it nicely and without anything else going on around in your head, basically. That's one thing that I always tell them.
Right. What about you, Devti? Would you like to say something?
Yeah, in my case, I have noticed that pictures and props work very well for children who are not really interested in listening to stories. A lot of times we in our sessions, a child is not interested, and in fact, our whole class is not interested sometimes. So then we just glance through the pictures, and in one session, we have actually made our own story from the pictures. We ask the children, "What do you think is happening here?" And they start making up their own stories, and that's where they get involved and they start getting interested. So give them pictures, give them props to explore on their own if they're not interested. Activities work very well for hands-on children. So they don't want to sit in one place and listen, that's fine. Design an activity around the book, and then it's very likely they'll get interested.
Yeah, we'll talk about that activity bit a little later though, because for a lot of parents it is a big, huge task to A, read or find a book, B, find read the right story, C, get the child interested, and then four, to do an activity around the book. That's a long shot. So we'll
Yeah,
get
I'd
to
like.
that a little later. Tanu, what are your
Yeah.
trick
Uh,
tips that you would like to give parents?
the first thing, okay, the way I see it is that first thing to get them interested in anything, if it's books, you need them to be sufficiently bored in the first place. All right. So if my first and foremost thing that I did was switch off the television. It was banned at home when they were kids because I had started realizing that when they were younger, I was using the television as a babysitter. you know and so once you switch that off, obviously they'll crib, they'll whine, and the best thing about children is they find ways to entertain themselves. So that's when you slip in the books. The second thing would be to not look for moral lessons, not
Absolutely.
look for value education. What I get this question asked a million times. How do I find books which have a moral at the end of it? And I always say you don't. That's for the school and you to do it. Leave the books out of it. If it happens, good. If it doesn't, don't force on that, because I've seen kids switch off because of the lengthy lessons involved in the particular books that they were encouraged to read. And then you have to be patient. You have to just let them be. There would be phases where they would not touch books. There would be phases when you'd get 20 best-selling books and they'll not be interested. They might want to go back and read a magazine or whatever it is. So you have to be patient. You cannot give up. I see a lot of parents, they just give up. Our child doesn't read and I have tried it and nothing works. Things work. Everybody loves reading. You just have to get to that right book. That's it.
Is there a right book at all? I mean, people talk about, what are the books that my child should be reading now? I mean, I started reading picture books when I was 31. So I don't think when I was a kid we had these amazing picture books, or even if there were, my parents didn't know. We read books which were which had pictures, and had good stories too, but they weren't like this. So, is there a right A? I mean, is there a right book for a perfect A? Is there a right book and a wrong book? Because people ask these questions: is this book perfect for my child, or how do I know which book will my child like? So, is there anything that you would like to add to that, Tanu?
There is no right age. There is no right book and right age combination. We buy picture books today. My elder one is 13-year-old, and we ooh and ah over it all the time. We read young adult books. We read middle readers, young readers, everything. I'm mostly found wandering around with children's book in my hand. So there is no right age. There is no right age to start. My husband has crossed 40 and he became a reader about 2 years back, and now he can't stop. So so I have parents who come in at 10-year-old with a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, and they actually convey that the ship has already sailed. It hasn't. It's always there. It's just a matter of clicking. It's just a matter of letting them be and choosing giving them options. Giving them options. They'll reject 5 books. Never mind. Give them a 6th one.
Yes.
And picture books. great starting point, at any age, at any age. We did a storytelling session, and there were kids around 14 and 15-year-olds there, and we did Unbreakable Code, which is a picture book, and we did other picture books also, and they tremendously enjoyed it. So there is no age.
Yeah, I mean, just to second
Right.
what Tanu said,
Devaki, would you like to add to that?
yeah, I was just saying, just to second what she's saying, I find myself enjoying picture books more than my son or, any other child probably. So there's really no age for it.
Yeah.
And every story can be explained at different levels. So different children at different ages can get the
Yeah.
story at different levels.
Yes.
So that's perfectly fine.
Right. Palak, would you like to say something?
Absolutely. Every child, I guess, has a book for him or her. You just have to find that right book. Because my daughter started reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar when she was 2 months. I read it for the first time, and she still picks it up, and it's still her favorite book. She's 3 now. So you just need to explore and keep on exploring. I love picture books like anything. If you send me to a bookstore, I'll go to a place where there's the kids section, and then I'll go to the adult section, so to say. And then recently I was reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory again, and Zoe wanted me to read it out to her, and I read it out, and she was sitting beside me and just listening to me. So it's there's no right wrong age per se for the child.
True.
Right. We have an interesting question from Sangeeta. She says, my 9-year-old has become independent and chooses her own books, okay. But I do miss the bedtime story reading time. Is there other ways to use books as bonding tools with kids? When? Which books?
Mhm.
So here's a parent who misses that child and me reading
Yes.
habit. So
Yeah.
do you think it stops? Like Tadu, you would like to take that?
Yeah, it's see, that's what I said. It changes. There were times when they would pull me along and get me to read from the book and read from it for 100 straight days, repeating it over and over again. And then they sort of, when they started reading on their own, they wanted to read to me, which is another interesting journey of its own. Now it's almost like we are a reading buddy club. So whenever a new book comes in, one of us, whoever gets their hands on it first has the first reading rights, and then we wait for all of us to finish so that we can, sort of gush over the characters and, oh, this is what I loved, and so I think that discussion point can be a great tool. But for that, again, you have to read whatever your daughter is reading. You have to be there, and you have to read it as not as a parent who's trying to, because you'll at that age you'll find books which might contain slightly unacceptable themes, maybe. We have read books which might not really go down well with a lot of parenting ideas, but you have to be open to that. You have to look at it from the child's perspective and discuss it, for the total love of that character, and not that, oh, it's written in the book but you should not do this, and no, just gush over it.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Totally.
Deepika, do you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what my mother and my father used to do when I was a evolving reader, so to speak. Of course, they stopped reading out to me, but there was always discussions around books that they may have read at my age, or something that I was reading. Even if they were not reading this exact same book, there would be something that they would add about it and create a little bit of a buzz around it. So I know it's also a great way to communicate with your child. I think also opens up so many channels and helps build trust with your child. Just because there's something which is taboo and that a book talks about, if that were to become a discussion topic at home, then that you can take issues back home. So I think it's a great tool. You have to accept that your children are not going to want you at some point. So there are multiple ways, and I think books are great bonding tools. Absolutely. And there's no one book that can do it for you. You just have to find it as you go along. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a very interesting question, which is how many books per week should one attempt when we have kids?
Don't. No. Don't even go there.
We're not laughing at the question, but we're laughing because we don't have an answer. Yeah, go
There are,
ahead.
there's
There's no
no,
answer.
there's no
There's no
answer.
answer.
No, you can go weeks on end without reading, and then you could just make up for it in a whole week, you know. So there is really no number to this. There is nothing at all. No.
Right.
And I think it's important not to be bogged down by these figures and statistics and, top 25 books to read, recommended lists and things like that. It just puts too much pressure on you and takes the whole charm out of reading. You can sit with one book for a whole year and it's okay. You may want to go back. Yeah.
Uh,
Right, Tanya was saying something.
yeah. Another thing, I have a friend whose son sort of skips chapters while reading. Okay. Now, a lot of parents would be bothered by that. And they would want to make sure that the child is reading each and every word and, finishing it at one go. But she's got an interesting take on it, that every time, he loves to reread. So every time he rereads, he discovers something new. Because that time he reads the chapters that he skipped, which is perfectly fine. So the pace of reading, the number of books per week is very subjective. I have kids who read sometimes 1 to 2 books a day. And I do a double take that you really did read that, because it sort of bites a big hole through my pocket, because that means that I have to buy many more. But that's what it is. I mean, if they're fast readers, they are fast readers. So there is no prescribed number. More the better.
Yeah, sometimes
At a
you
young
try
age,
to go ahead.
yeah, I was just saying at a younger age, when a child is just 2 or 3, and when the parent is reading to the child, I think it's important to make a habit out of it. So maybe you can decide a time, a bedtime, or something which works for you, and stick to it regularly as far as possible.
Palak, do you want to say something?
I think read regularly is the key. If you want to read one book in a day, you can read one book. And there are days where we go on like 2 hours, 2.5 hours reading non-stop. So if the child is in that zone and if you are in that zone, then why not have a reading marathon kind of a thing.
Right. But I think stories can be told at, I personally believe that stories can be told and experienced at almost anywhere. You're driving to school, going vegetables shopping, tell your kid the journey this vegetable that you're buying has made, which part of the country did it come from, how did it reach here, why are we buying it, what are we going to make with it. Everything is a story that you tell a child. So I believe that if you are a
Absolutely.
storyteller and you are talking to your child and are generating these stories from scratch, you can let them happen anywhere. And if one has to start thinking of the stories you told in a day, they could be one, they could be none, because that means you've not spoken to your child at all the whole day. And but it could be even 50. So, whatever you told, whatever conversation you had with your child. Okay, that takes me to the next question. Do we look at storytelling as a chore, something which has to be done every day, or which has to, be exercised every day? Oh my God, my child has not read a book today, or I have not read a story. Am I going to start palpitating because of that?
Yes, I would like to add to that one.
Yeah.
So when the boys were growing up, there were days, I mean, you're human. So there would be days when you just want to curl up and sleep and not tell a story and you not care about the schedule and, the whole reading habit and no. So at that time, the podcasts came, they were a big help. My mother podcasts these Hindi stories. They started out as a way of connecting with their grandchildren, as you said. I mean, grandparents were the original storytellers. So since that opportunity wasn't available readily, he started these podcasts, and we would record them. So I had put them in the iPod, and the days when I'd not be up to it, I'd play a story, and they would anyway hear their, daily dose of a story, but not necessarily from me. So what the point I'm trying to get it as is, don't put too much of pressure on yourself. It's not a task that you have to tackle necessarily every day. it's fine if you don't want to. There are different channels. As long as, I think the whole idea is to keep them engaged and in love with the whole idea of stories, books, imagining stuff. So any tool, anything, there are so many things available now. So anything works.
Yeah.
Right. How does one experience a book? I mean, Deepta, I think you just did a session on carpentry tales. So, where do such things come from? I mean, you obviously we do nature walks and then we do a story. There are books on, the story of a seed and wind and everything. But really, when it comes to a child and using his let's willingness to listen to a story, where does a storyteller, let's say, even it could be a mother, you don't need to go to a professional storyteller, but even if it's a mother, where do you look for these inspirations? How do you tuck in these little stories in your everyday life?
Um, I think part of being a storyteller, I think part of my job is to constantly think in story form and think in stories. So I'm trying to see where all I can plug in stories, where all it's going to add value. So I think I'm constantly on the lookout for some of these experiences, and consciously so. And I think anybody can do that, quite honestly. So the whole carpentry thing was just it just came up on a random browse one day when I realized that there was something, there was a DIY square that I could, go to. And I said, fantastic. I mean, what can I do to reach this out to more kids? Can I plug in storytelling somewhere, somehow? And one thing led to the other. And you'll be amazed at the number of stories there are out there about carpenters. I mean, who would imagine, right? So I think it's about just thinking some things through. There are stories about just about anything and everything in this world. I think so, and you just have to find them. Sometimes they come to you, sometimes you go seeking. So that's how the whole thing was envisioned, and it really is not rocket science.
Right.
So yeah.
You, Dev, would you like to add something to that? How does one experience a book? I mean, you read let's say, let's look at a basic book like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You read the book. How can you experience it further? In terms of let's not even look at creative expressions through art, craft, and things like that. What could be the conversations that you would have? What would be the experience that you would do and learn and understand?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to get the child's perspective on the story, I think. So, for example, the mention, Goldilocks that you mentioned, we did that book, and then we started talking about good manners. So, was it right on her part to enter somebody's home, and would you just enter into your friend's home without knocking? So, we started asking the children these things, and there were so many different answers that came up, and these were the way they related to the story. So there's really so much that you can learn just from listening to the child. Forget the art, craft activities, get their perspective on the story.
Also, can I just add to what she said?
Absolutely.
Sometimes there are occasions where children don't like a story,
Yeah.
and it's perfectly all right. I think that becomes another discussion point for you, because you try to explore angles in terms of why the child did not like the story. It's very easy for you to say, I liked it and I did not like it, but what is it about the story that you liked, and what is it about the story you did not like? Therefore, I think that in itself is an experience that you're trying to create around the book. And also encouraging children to sort of back their answers with enough data to have arrived at that conclusion, because it's very easy for you to jump to a conclusion. And I notice this constantly, and it could be a function of conditioning. It could be just messages that children keep receiving from home, from school, from wherever, from their parents. So sometimes they can just diss a story as, oh, that's for girls, or that's for boys, or oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that. So you try to get to the root of that. And I think questioning is a very important aspect of creating an experience around a book. I think elicitation, the process of getting these, let's say, deep-rooted ideas in your child out through the process of questioning, becomes a very important aspect of experiencing a book or a story. And I think that's what we need to consciously focus on. it could be either way. The child could like the book or not like the book, but it's important to understand why, and therefore gives you an opportunity to course correct, you know.
Right. Tanu, do you endorse that?
Uh, I'd like to give an example here.
Yeah.
We did this story, giraffe can dance. So we did that, and we read about it, and there was a one bunch of 7 to 9 year olds. So after we were done, obviously they enjoyed it. We jumped, danced, whatever. Then we came to the discussion point. Now, children, most of them don't really see adults with shades of gray, in the sense that either they are flawed or they are supermen, super beings. You know, it's a very clear-cut demarcation. So the first step was to come to their level and to relate a very personal experience where I was the giraffe who couldn't dance, and how I could not get over it for a long time, and how much pain it had caused. And that's what got them opening up, that yeah, that happens with us. Yes, so and so does this, and so the whole discussion starts once you give in to them that yes, I'm an adult, and yes, I have faced my share of problems, and no, none of them are absolutely gone now. Some of them are still there, but I'm getting by, and I'm dealing with it. So that's a very important part of making that whole story, a part of their own experience, and sort of use that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. Palak, do you have something to add to that? Palak, I don't think she's tuned in right.
Alex.
Okay, let's take a question now. This is from Yamini. She says,
Mm-hmm.
"Hi, I'm Yamini from Pune. I would like to ask, how do you go about narrating the story in English to children who are not so attuned to the language? Do you intersperse your narration with regional language too?" This is an interesting question. The reason being is that a lot of people want to know that English is usually the chosen language for storytelling when you take a child somewhere. But vernacular languages or exposing a child to one's mother tongue in stories is lacking somewhere. So how does one? And again, you may land up with a bunch of kids who are not very comfortable with English.
Hmm.
So, or rather, the English in the book that you're doing. So how do you adapt to your audience?
Hmm.
Uh,
Um,
Devki, would you like to take this?
yes, I would, because my son is 4 years old right now, and he's not yet completely fluent in English. So I started reading with him when he was about maybe a year, less than a year old, and till he was about 3 years old, he couldn't understand anything, honestly, in English. So I used to read English language books to him in our mother tongue, Marathi. I used to tell him the story in Marathi, add in a little bit of English sometimes. He learned a lot of words in that process, but mostly the story was narrated in Marathi. And there was absolutely no problem in that.
Hmm.
My point was that I wanted him to enjoy this. Language didn't matter at that point, at that age. And I tried introducing the language gradually. Right now it's about 60-40 mix, but still a lot of it is in Marathi. And I'm sure he will eventually pick up the language. I'm not worried about that.
So there are quite a few
Right.
things.
I know parents. Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry. Language, honestly, I feel is secondary, and a lot of parents do feel that this is. They see the whole book reading thing in a very different light. They see it as a tool. A lot of them see it as a tool to teach them language, teach them English, so that they get fluent in English. I honestly feel that's a wrong approach. It has to be primarily to fall in love with stories. So language doesn't matter. So what we have done in past is, where we have had an audience of the street children, is we did a junior kumkaran with such children, and I asked the author for either a Hindi translation or a Hindi version for it. The books that you do not find in Hindi, but you still want the kids to experience, it's fine if you translate a few words here, there, or correlate with something which is there true in our culture. Say the book mentions pancakes. Most kids would not know pancakes. So you substitute it with something else. That's really secondary.
Mm.
Yes.
Right. Nitya, you also use a you use a lot of stories from around the world. So obviously there could be a Japanese tale or a Korean tale and things like that. When you are using a story from a different background, how do you use it to tell the Indian audience as such? Because a lot of parents or a lot of people who say like, okay, let's read a Indian book, or this giraffe cut dance is a good book out there, but then my child perhaps won't relate to it. So do you agree to that, or how do you go about breaking that multicultural experience?
So I think in our in the after school programs that we run, we do this very consciously. Is that we have these we have these monthly themes, and the idea is to introduce the whole multicultural aspect of things and try to draw similarities between cultures and differences, and that the fact that it's okay to have these differences and it's okay to have these similarities. So for example, we just finished a theme on Africa, and at the end of the whole session, where we did a small, a little project, um, I showed them pictures of children in different parts of Africa. So it varied from being children in rural settings to children in the more civilized parts of Africa, in the big cities, so to speak. And one of the things that came out of that exercise was, hey, you know what? They're not so different from the children in India. I see children in India carrying pots on their heads, and so do children in Africa. I see families going into the mall in India, and I also see that in Africa. So we're all actually the same people. We're only different. I mean, we're only divided by borders, perhaps. And this is something that I do very consciously in my sessions, for the same reason that you asked this question, that it is important to introduce these elements to break stereotypes that exist. And that's one thing that I'm personally very, very passionate about,
Right.
that it's not that. Yeah.
Right, and that's what I think the beauty of stories are, that you can pick a story, see where it fits in the world, and who can experience the same experiences or go through the same events and have an interpretation for the same. I think that's the beauty of stories. Palak, would you like to share something from your own experience?
I do a lot of multicultural stories,
Palak?
especially. Hello, yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I do a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
multicultural stories, especially for my older batch. I did Handa's Surprise, which is based in Africa. I did The Magic Paintbrush, which is based in China. So it's a China-based book. So we do a lot of stories, and if there are certain things that kids are not aware about, we explore them rather than change them and fit them to things that kids are aware about. So kids not only understand and connect with the story better, they get to know about different things, about different cultures, and that's the beauty. Like you share a story with them, and then you tell them about that culture or that thing. It becomes like it's so beautiful. And why are we talking about different countries? In India as well, if you see a story based in South India and in North India, it'll be quite different. And that's when kids kind of explore and they see what are these differences and they appreciate that. So that's again a very good thing that you can do with stories and books.
Right. I have an interesting question from Vani. She says that it's the other way around for me. Since me and my husband are from Tamil Telugu background, my son speaks only English. He doesn't like to read Pratham or Tulika in Indian languages. How can I get my son to love Indian languages? He thinks English is our language.
I think that's another
Anyone
universal
like to take
problem.
that? Yes,
I have
I have. I know a couple. I know a parent. They are half UP and half Nepali, and they want their son to actually listen to Nepali stories, songs, and read Nepali books. Now the kid is the subject is a year and a half old, but they are now getting down on their hands and legs to actually create books for their little child, so that so that he knows, at least he sees what the text looks like, because we talk about sight words and all, what do books words look like, as children. So they want to start it right there. So there are there are parents who are really worried that my child will not know his or her mother tongue. So I think Vani also endorses that. Anyone like to take that?
Uh, Zoe had the same problem till a year back almost. So then I always read and discuss with her. So what I do now is I read in English because there are not many books available in Urdu in India, unfortunately. So I read in English and I discuss in the mother tongue then. So it becomes she now understands and speaks both language almost like she's parallelly good with both languages. So that's one thing that I made sure I do, and I did it purposely, and I'm glad that I did it. So yeah, you can make the book that is in English, make it a multi-language book of like you read in English and then you translate or discuss with your son in Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Urdu, whatever language you want.
Right. Anyone else?
No, I
Yeah,
think
yeah. Go ahead, Devaki. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was just saying it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying it. I think it goes much beyond just reading books. If you want to expose your children to the mother tongue, it has to start from the. I mean, each parent can, converse in their own tongue with a child from the very beginning. Or you can have grandparents, interact with them. So, taking my example, I myself, I have a Maharashtrian mother and a Kannadiga father. So I'm more fluent in Marathi because I was born and brought up in Bombay. But my dad used to always speak with me only in Kannada. So, and he does the same with my son now. So, that's just you have to put in that kind of effort. It's not beyond reading it.
Yeah, I think it's about I also have a multilingual background at home. I'm a Tamilian. My husband is Punjabi. He speaks Hindi, not Punjabi though. And then of course there's English. And with my husband and my son, it's only Hindi, and that's because it's consciously driven down. And with me, it's a mixture of Tamil and English because I mix the two when I speak. So and that's how my sons learned to decode. So, and I think like what Devaki said, it's about putting in that effort. And sometimes I don't just limit it to reading. I introduce him to music in my language, and he loves it. He loves music. So each child picks up a language in a certain way. I introduce a lot of Tamil songs to him. He sings Tamil songs. He may not be speaking the language as much, but he's in touch with the language in some way or the other. And I think that's what's important. Let's face it, a child, when presented with multiple language opportunities, is probably at some point, especially when school starts, he or she is going to probably only choose English over the other languages. But I think at home you can do a lot more by helping them stay in touch with their first languages. That's very important, and I don't think it's just limiting it to reading. It's a whole lot of things. It could be just a phone call with a grandparent, and when you tell the grandparent, look, converse with my child only in Tamil, and make sure that they do it. So I think these are little things you can enforce.
Right. And I just ask this question that okay, fine. Now we're telling parents, giving them a bit of our help in how to read, what to read, how to use books in their life. But let's talk about a little about why is get a story program important? Where do storytellers come into this whole picture? Why should they take them to a storytelling session or to professional storytellers who sessions? Why do you what's your opinion?
Who's that for, Ritu? Who's that question for?
Oh, anyone can answer this one.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone would love to answer this one.
Yeah, that's the biggest question of this whole chat.
Okay. It's not essential, first of all, to go to a storyteller, honestly. But then a lot of parents do find the task a little overbearing. Getting them interested, getting to pick the right book, getting them to be passionate about books. I think that's where such groups, they come in handy. You meet other kids who are equally crazy or unsure. I mean, either ways. I've had kids who've come in with a face that clearly told that they've been pushed here by the parents. and they didn't want to initially. So you have all sorts of groups, but it's I think heartening for them to meet other children with similar thoughts, with similar likes, then sort of discover the passion together and discuss it together. So you've got this crazy bunch who are all excited about some picture book or some book, and they discuss it, and so I think that whole thing can come out out of only through, I mean, come out of these storytelling groups or centers, because otherwise, I mean, it's, as we pointed out earlier, we are in a nuclear family society now. There's very little interaction. Whatever interaction is there, it is definitely not around books. Definitely not. So I think that presents an opportunity for that interaction, for that common ground, to find that passion.
Right. Palak?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to add to that. I guess when you read to your child and when you take him or her to a session, then the child experiences a different storyteller altogether. I take my daughter to whatever sessions are age appropriate for her, because I want her to experience the different tellers, the different readers, the way they interact and they read books and they tell stories. No one's perfect, yeah, and that's the difference is what I want her to experience. Secondly, when kids go in these clubs or these sessions, they discuss books. That 1.5, 2 hours, these are all around books, all around stories, which we don't at home. As Tanu said, at home, when we read books, it's just a 10, 15, 20 minutes, and we keep the books aside. But when we go at sessions, we discuss, and we discuss with like-minded people. We have arguments. We like the same thing. We dislike the same thing. So that is, again, which develops that kind of love and that kind of passion for reading and books and stories.
Right. Devki?
Yeah, I have a slightly contrary opinion.
Hello, Devki? Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying
I can.
I was saying I have a slightly contrary opinion there. I believe parent-child reading at home is the best option when the children are young. And if that's absolutely not possible, you don't have the time, then yes, you can try a professional storyteller. But really, if you have the time and you can make a little bit of effort, it's always best, because as I said before, it's mostly a bonding experience more than anything else, which just cannot come from any professional storyteller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Can I add?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When some child or some parent come to us and they say that, okay, we are reading to the child, why should we come to you? The answer that I give is, the more you read, you go to libraries, you read with your child, you bring them to sessions. So let them explore those books in different areas and different situations, rather than just restricting it between a parent and child, which is beautiful, which is unmatched completely. But a session actually is more of a group exercise, more of a interaction, and it's more planned per se. So that's one thing more that we have to say to parents, that it is planned, it's research based when we pick up books and everything.
Right. Uh, do you think stories, reading, storytelling, they go a long way in a child's life, in an individual's life? Are stories only meant for children? Are storytelling only meant for children? Or do you think it is an exercise or a way of life that can help an individual forever?
I'd like to take that, Ritu.
Yes.
Just because I work with all age groups of people, and like I said right at the beginning, um, we are storytelling beings, if I can call it that. So, and we are all wired to process information in the form of story. That's the only form of communication we understand. So it's very unfair to put an age restriction on this. Although I think when you use the word storytelling, it's become synonymous with children, and one of the things that I constantly struggle with is breaking that mindset. But once people of all ages experience it, then yes, they do begin to see value. They do begin to understand that it is for them as well. For a lot of people, for a lot of adults, it's about going back in time and touching, maybe connecting with that child inside them, because they think that that's what it is. But storytelling for adults has so many applications. I mean, in a corporate situation, you can, for leaders, storytelling becomes a very important skill to have, very important communication tool to have, to learn how to tell a story, to influence, to inspire, to educate, to transform, whatever. So, and for older children in schools, and when I say older children, I mean, let's say ages 10 and above, stories become a way to learn their subjects more, in a more interesting, engaging manner. So, for example, the one example I always share is about the story of Anne Frank. I mean, it may be a story, it may be a book today, but it's pointers into history, it's pointers into conflict, it's pointers into human rights, it's pointers into, it's into our own history of who we are and where we come from. It's about understanding your origins, your roots. So it just doesn't stop with being a story or a book. The applications are diverse. They spread across age groups, from the time a child is a newborn to the time you go to your grave. You are all about stories. And very famously, Margaret Atwood said, in the end, we all become stories. And I think that's what we all are. It's the only thing. It's
Yes.
the only fabric that binds all of us. And there's
Yes.
no
That's what.
going away from that fact. We're always going to need stories.
Yes, yes, that's the crux of I'm a storyteller project, because stories go a long way into a person's life, and if you believe in the power of stories, it can influence others and even yourself, affect your own self. It can help you solve a lot of problems. Is there anyone who wants to add to that from
I'd
one's
like
own
to, yeah,
experience, maybe?
yeah, I'd like to add to that.
Yes.
Um, Deepta and me belong to the Bangalore Storytelling Society, and we do storytelling for adults, and we share stories almost every month. We have a meetups and everything. And believe me when I say this, is equally therapeutic for me to listen to stories there, share stories, discuss them. And when I come back and read it to kids, then it's I experience the same thing there. So it's not like defined by age. It's actually you can read and share stories and enjoy them throughout. So that's what I believe. And that's it. Yeah.
True.
Okay. Yeah, great. Tanu, Devaki, do you want to say something?
I think we have pretty much rounded it all up.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you for joining in. I'm just going to show a few slides which are like with information about you guys. So, links to your Facebook page or websites that you have, so that anyone who is listening to this wants to look up for more information, they can. Deepta, did you enjoy this?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think we need to do more such hangouts. There's just so much to talk about. I think we're just scratching the surface. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. So that was Deepta. Uh, can you see this?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. So that's Devki. Devki, did you enjoy this?
absolutely. Fantastic experience. Thank you for calling me.
Okay, great. So that's Little Reader's Nook. You can look it up if you want to and have more information. And that's Dr. Tanushree Singh. We did talk about your doctorate. We didn't talk about your psychology background at all. But then, yes, I think everyone would have been able to make something of whatever you said. Tadu, did you enjoy this?
Oh, lovely. It was lovely. Need to do more.
Yeah. Ah, okay. So that's the common feeling. feedback. And
Yeah.
there I have Palak. Palak,
Yeah,
what was your feedback?
I loved it. I just loved it. And we have to do more of this, definitely.
Okay, great. Chalo, on that note, thank you guys. Thank you for talking here and that for everyone who viewed this. And this will be up on YouTube and you can carry on talking about storytelling. Thank you and
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks,
Bye.
Ritu.
Thank you.
Bye.